Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night on TalkTV, and this is the one place where you don't have to worry about being judgmental because we do it all for you. I've got a great panel of people here who are going to be telling me who they think should be the winner. You can make your own judgments at home if you wish, but I'll be the ultimate decider, of course. And I'm delighted to say that we've got a great panel of people who have done this before, so they know what they're doing. Esther Krakue, the star of TalkTV. We've got Russell Quirk, of course, a man of many parts. Candice Holdsworth, she's here because she's the nice person on the panel, and Ben Habib, the killer, at the end, who's going to decide on an awful lot of things. Let's get things started. This is what we're playing for, the Plank of the Week, and lots of people have won it. And there's lots of names on here tonight which are quite familiar to our audience, I think. And I think the first one, Esther, to you, people are going to love it. Tell us.
Sadiq Khan.
Of course. Could be the winner already.
Other than Meghan and Harry, I don't think there's anyone I've nominated more times. But it's probably because I live in London. Anyway, so Sadiq Khan, where to begin? Well, you notice that Sadiq Khan's ULEZ rollout has been controversial.
Yes.
The High Court ruled that it is illegal, unfortunately, so we'll be going ahead on the 29th. And it narrowly decided who won the Uxbridge by-election. Is it 29th of August?
It is,
yeah,
isn't it?
Exactly.
So not far away.
But they narrowly decided basically who won the ULEZ by-election, the Uxbridge by-election, because the Tories were slated to lose that seat. But surprisingly, they held on because everyone hates the ULEZ. Well, Sadiq Khan, when he was asked why he is still going ahead with this, even though Keir Starmer has also told him to, act with caution, he said that tradespeople should be happy about ULEZ because it means they're less likely to get asthma and therefore are less likely to take days off from work.
This is a man who clearly doesn't understand what it's like to work for yourself. People who work for themselves don't take days off because they can't afford to.
Well, but this is the thing, and I don't understand, even if we follow his warped logic, I don't understand how, to try and avoid asthma and to save the planet, I need to give Sadiq Khan more of my money.
Yes.
Like, how did you jump from that to you are now the savior of the planet? It's very strange. And I also made the point that these cars, if they do get scrapped, if they're taken off the road to avoid ULEZ, they're not going to get destroyed or anything. They're going to be sold in less developing countries. Or less developed
Somebody will be driving around Estonia or something.
Probably going to have a poor Bangladeshi child that's going to inhale the fumes from this car. So he's actually not saving anyone. He's just
but you know what he keeps saying?
He keeps saying,
every time he gets interviewed, he keeps saying, I've been listening to Londoners.
No.
But of course he hasn't actually.
Well, apart from the consultation, of course, which came back and said, I think about 80% of Londoners said, no, please don't extend ULEZ.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, once they stop fining people for ULEZ because they've got rid of all the petrol cars, internal combustion engine cars, they will start charging them for driving their electric cars.
Yeah.
That's coming straight down the line.
Right.
Anyone who thinks by buying an electric car they're going to sidestep Sadiq Khan, forget it.
No.
We're going to get taxed anyway.
He often forgets the kind of people, the most vulnerable people that need cars, like, for instance, women. I obviously work at night. I have to come into London at night and go home. My car is my safety because I don't really want to be out in public transport at midnight and God knows what with crime going up in London. There's so many vulnerable people.
Which is also his fault, by the way.
Well, yes, exactly. But there's so many vulnerable people that actually do need cars. And this anti-motorist attitude that he has in governing London is really counterproductive.
Yes, and also with the cyclists as well. They assume that you're just someone who can cycle around anywhere. They forget about women with children, older people. It's like, it's the real man bun crowd.
And the dangers of cycling in London,
And nurses and doctors who've got to go late out to work, come back at unearthly hours.
But
there's no easy,
hilarious contradiction.
public transport.
The hilarious contradiction, though, is that Sadiq Khan has also said, don't worry, most cars on the roads in London right now won't be caught by the fines because they're compliant. 9 out of 10. If that's the case, why on earth introducing it as an extension anyway?
Exactly.
And also,
he's going to get. There are people who actually come into London to work. There are also people who actually have to deliver things in London, and that's who he's going to get. And
do you
that's
think
the
it might
business
just be
he's
a
going to stop.
tax to raise money for Sadiq Khan?
Well, obviously.
I think. Well, you know that
We've rumbled it.
Well, you know that the ULEZ zone in existence before they expand it in 2022 made £224 million for TfL, and a third of that was in fines, right? So they're hoping to get it up to like £500 million, obviously. But let's have a look at what he says he's doing it for, because he reckons that loads of people in London don't even have a car, and he's doing it to help the BAME community.
Yeah, the BAME.
So who suffers the worst consequences of air quality and climate change? It's the poorest Londoners, least likely to own a car. And by the way, not just an issue of social justice, an issue of racial justice. Black Londoners suffer the worst. Those who live near main roads, brackets, tend to be BAME communities, black agent minority, I think, close brackets, suffer the worst air quality. So this actually is an issue of social justice and racial justice, but also half Londoners don't own a car.
He doesn't sound like a human.
What's he talking about?
He sounds like he's been programmed. He sounds like he left his house, fitted the battery pack in his back, and just said, "Black people, BAME, close bracket, social justice."
He's an autonomous kind of gaslight.
Yeah.
No, but this is,
by the way, given that London is now a minority white city, 38% of people that live in London are now white. He's actually not helping the minority. He's helping the majority because the BAME community actually makes up a bigger number than the white community.
Is he saying that air is racist?
Sorry.
Saying that air is racist.
Yeah, he is. He is saying that. But it gets even worse this week because not only did he do all that ULEZ stuff, but he actually came out earlier this week and came out with a new plan to stop phones from being robbed. Because apparently people are getting robbed on a very, very often. I think 6 phones an hour get stolen in London. And he reckons the reason they get stolen is because they're too good. Yeah, and what he's now going to say to the manufacturers of iPhones and of Android phones is, can you make the phones less good so that people won't steal them?
That's him.
He released a statement with Sir Mark Rowley and asked. He literally said, "We implore you. Is there a way that we can work together to make the phones virtually useless when they're stolen?"
Yeah.
And
him, he's virtually he's managed to get the lock on being virtually useless. Maybe he should give them some advice.
What do you expect the phone companies to do? Do
you know what his logic is, though? It's even funnier because his logic is that they I presume not him, but members of the government at some point or other had a conversation with car manufacturers to say, please make it more difficult for people to steal the radios out of cars, because you're probably old enough, Russell, to remember when you used to be able to take the radio out.
That was a long time ago.
I had a Volkswagen years ago, and you could pull the radio out, take it into the house. But the problem is, of course, yes, they did make it a sort of solid dashboard, but now they just nick the whole car. They don't.
And that is a low-level crime.
The radio, they take the lot.
That is regarded as a low-level crime.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, they would actually prosecute for someone nicking your cassette player.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they take your car and they say, well, just tell the insurance company.
Well, now it's not even seen as a crime.
It's not even seen as a crime.
But the thing is, any rational political actor would say, actually, it may be in our best interest to actually target the criminals. But now they're asking the phone companies to make it less appealing for these people to commit a crime.
Is the extension of this also to say to business owners and homeowners to rid your property of anything valuable?
Yeah.
Then you won't get burgled.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we're almost going into conspiracy theory here. Yeah. You know, if you join the dots, we're all going to end up destitute but happy.
Well, somebody suggested to me on Twitter, maybe you should have a word with Rolex and just say, look, stop making such nice watches, just make really shit watches. And then nobody will want to rob you.
But that's giving up. I mean, he's just giving up.
It really is. It's giving up. It's giving up.
Can we just clarify?
Quite right.
Sadiq Khan is the London Police and Crime Commissioner.
He is.
He's responsible for a budget of London policing of £4 billion.
Yes.
And his response is not to increase the amount of police officers, to make them less woke, to make them more efficient, to actually make them do their jobs. His solution is basically to dumb down nice things in society to stop things being stolen.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to kiss up to you, Mike. But if but if Sadiq
like kissing up to him.
if Sadiq Khan doesn't win, I'm just saying.
Yeah, all right. Well, listen, we've spent way too much time on Sadiq Khan already, so you've already somehow skewed the vote.
I'm just saying.
Russell, come on, give us something to fight against.
Well, let's spend some time on the Bibi Stockholm,
let's do it,
which has obviously been in the news massively over recent weeks. And the reason it's my nomination is just because it's a pathetic joke. I mean, it's kind of joke face.
It really is.
When it comes to
it's like Carry On Migrants.
Yeah. So let's just kind of summarise where we are with the Bibi, right? Yeah. So it's a barge that the government has spent tens of millions of pounds on refurbishing. It's going to cost £20,000 a day, apparently to actually keep this.
And there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
How can you spend? How much have they spent?
It's millions and millions.
Yeah, millions and millions.
£20,000 a day.
It still looks like that on the outside.
£20,000 a day. They've given local authorities.
Set fire to it.
Can't have fat migrants.
So they've given local authorities and the local port £6 million to provide for infrastructure. So this thing has actually cost an absolute fortune.
There's the kitchen. 24 hours a day that's open, by the way.
24 hours a day. There's a choice of breakfast. So you can have oatmeal, you can have pancakes, you can have full English
waffles.
breakfast. Waffles. Choice of lunch, choice of dinner. There's a basketball court. There's 2 separate outside recreational areas.
Nice.
We, as the taxpayers, are also going to be paying for free buses and free taxis so that the
Although Care for Calais call it inhumane, though.
It's terrible.
Because they've got to go on a bus to get to the port's gate.
But here's why it's my plank. So we spent all this money, and we're going to spend all this money ongoing on the basis that apparently it's better than the 4-star hotel. I mean, it is a 4-star hotel, effectively. And guess how many people are on it? 15. 15.
Yeah.
So work that out per capita.
It's a joke. 20 other people that were meant to go on it said they have a fear of water. Based on the trauma.
The trauma of coming over and
couldn't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. Yeah. I've also got a terrible fear of dinghies. Well, you managed to get in one, though. I did manage to get in one.
But it was horrible.
That's why I'm frightened of them. And actually, the lefties are going, well, if you'd come across the channel, you'd be scared of water as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, they do have a point. I mean, I've been on those channel ferries, and they can be a bit frightening, especially when it gets a bit rough.
Honestly, we are doomed.
Yeah, the Care for Calais. The Care for Calais charity.
You know, I think if you look at the Bibi Stockholm, is a microcosm of British capability to govern.
Yeah.
We know we're doomed, as you say, Esther.
We're doomed.
We can't get anything right. We can't even put people on a barge.
Right.
For goodness sake.
Yeah, it's farcical, and that's why it's
farcical.
The mayor of Portland was saying that the beds were only 6 feet. And so if you're taller than 6 feet, it's deeply uncomfortable. I mean, this is the kind of thing she was complaining about. And I just thought, what about the homeless people in your city? How are you going to justify your concerns about how comfortable the bed is for these people?
And just so that we're aware, so with 2,000 people coming over in dinghies every week still now, particularly now as the weather gets better. So 15 people being housed is about an hour's worth of...
Yeah, it is. And they can't pull it up. Because there's also one guy who says that he can't go onto the barge because it might remind him of the time he was hiding from ISIS. When he was in quite a small, restricted space. I don't know if he had bunk beds there and a 24-hour
We said the cell was about the same size.
where he could actually go and eat anytime he liked and maybe some TV, a gym. I mean, for heaven's sake, you know, these lawyers are just complete and utter shysters. You know, if
I
you ever
don't even
needed to
blame
know
the lawyers.
who to... Well, the lawyers are to blame because they're the ones telling them you can be suffering from mental health problems.
No, but I'm sorry, the lawyers are acting in the interest of their clients, as any lawyer should.
But they're making stuff up.
But the problem is the loopholes.
They're schooling people
Parliament is sovereign. If you have a problem with the loopholes that these lawyers are exploiting, close the loopholes.
These aren't loopholes.
No, hang on.
These aren't loopholes.
Hang on. Lying is not a loophole, right? Lying is lying.
Yes.
What they're doing...
But there are also massive loopholes.
Exactly.
And as Esther
correctly says... Is it lying or is it defending your client?
Where is this wretched illegal migration bill? It seems to have gone into the rough in the Lords or the Commons somewhere.
Yeah.
I thought it'd been through everything. We were going to get this fantastic Act of Parliament that was going to allow us
to... now.
What?
Any day now.
Any day now. It's not going to happen, is it?
You know, and they're hanging on to this going, you know, when it comes in, that will be the end of it.
But it's
you just go, no. It really
and now we're disrupting the trade of dinghies in Turkey. Have you read about this?
Yeah, that was the deal done, wasn't it?
That was the deal done. And what it doesn't say is how much money we're paying Turkey in order to be able to go there and knife their
bucket
dinghies.
Loads, presumably.
And maybe they haven't thought about the fact that dinghies can get into France from multiple different directions, not just from Turkey.
I have some sympathy with the government. It's a bit like herding cats, this thing, isn't it? I mean, because every time you close down one thing over there, they pop up over here. You know, next thing they'll be coming in via
But there
Ireland
is a solution, Mike. It's a solution. There is a solution. When they say stop the boats, actually stop the boats.
Just stop them, yeah.
Just stop them.
Actually stop them.
Or stop the incentives that attract the people in the boats in the first place.
I like that approach, and I like that they're trying to do that, manage incentives and disincentives. I just think, though, anyone who comes into this area is going to become a figure of hate. Like Suella Braverman has become a figure of hate, and most politicians will go nowhere near that. They won't.
Well, listen, now we can't just stop the boats. We have to stop talking about stopping the boats because we're over time. Candice, who's your first nominee?
Oh, so it's Matt Hancock.
It's Matt Hancock. Now, this is good.
Tough
I'm sorry,
contender.
Esther. This is tough.
Well, I'm just saying.
Come on.
I don't know where to start with this. I don't want to be too hard on him because he's just joking. But this...
You can't be too hard on Matt Hancock.
Well, shall we watch the clip and then
Let's watch the clip. Oh, my God.
Here's Matt Hancock on holiday. I can't really tell you what he's doing because nobody's really... a song from Barbie, which is something like I can't Ken enough.
I am Ken or something.
Or I am Ken or
I'm
something
just
like
Ken.
I'm just Ken. And
I'm
that is
just
a
Ken.
hard act to follow.
He's just something
Ken.
else. He's just something else.
Yeah, I mean, he's no Ryan Gosling.
He's just a Hancock.
To Ken would be something better than that.
But what is he doing? This was a serious politician at some point. And now he's chasing TikTok likes. If you actually look on his TikTok, though, it is bizarre. It's like a jarring mix of him talking about his favourite chocolate bars, his favourite drinks, and then some like random policy stuff in there.
Do you think he's getting advised to do all this by his new paramour, Gina?
Yes, I've read this. Yes, there's some enabling behind
I think
the
she's
scenes.
filming that, right, on the beach.
Oh
but now we're beginning to see exactly why the whole COVID response went so badly wrong, aren't we? Because of this idiot.
He's just a strange man.
He's just very odd.
I get in trouble for saying we need to pay our politicians like loads more money.
I wouldn't give him any more money.
To weed out these weird people.
Don't give him any more money.
Not him specifically. But the thing is, if we had serious people in Parliament, if we had serious contenders as politicians, someone like this would never have slipped through the cracks.
I don't mind people being interesting and being kind of imaginative.
He's strange.
He is odd. I said earlier in the week, he's the only guy in the entire world who thinks he's interesting.
Yeah.
He thinks he's cool.
He's got no emotional intelligence.
He thinks he's got some kind of attraction to women.
Yeah, he's got no personal
Gina
awareness.
has always convinced him that he's some kind of heartthrob.
Yeah, no personal awareness, no judgment whatsoever.
Also, he's wearing white socks on the beach, and I'm sorry.
Is he?
That's a no-no. Yeah, definitely a no-no.
Some people could pull that off, right? Like being a bit of an awkward guy, and it's lovable, but he can't. He just can't. He's not pulling it off, and he needs to be told.
He's no David Beckham or David Gandy, isn't he? For sure. And also, this TikTok thing here has now had 3.5 million views.
Yeah.
So maybe
it's more like David Brent, actually. He's David. He is. He's David Brent.
He is David Brent.
I just think he's trying to stay in the news. I think that's his.
Well, he could just be being very, very clever because look, we're talking about it. You know, he'll be a parody in the future, but maybe look, he's just intent on making sure he has a showbiz career after politics. Maybe he's been very clever.
He has a very politically.
I mean, I suppose you wouldn't be surprised.
Name.
He's been in I'm a Celebrity. He might get onto Strictly. Would he possibly get onto Strictly?
But he's not really a celebrity. He's a curiosity.
Yes.
We watch him because he's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
like a bug under a microscope.
Like a bug. You're compelled to watch him because you can't believe any human being would degrade themselves to that
extent. It's degrading.
He's like that chap, the skier. Do you remember Eddie the Eagle?
Yeah.
Eddie Eagle.
But at least Eddie the Eagle actually did something and
guts.
tried to actually achieve something, although he was crap at it. You know, Matt Hancock's just objectionable, isn't he?
He's just strange.
He's just very odd.
Good nomination, though.
And you know, let's not forget, he's got a family that he left behind, and I'm not going to be too critical of that. But he's got kids. I mean, imagine his kids looking at that, going, "Crikey, Dad, you know, would you mind just putting it away?" Yeah. You know. Anyway, so. Back to more serious matters. Ben Habib.
Well, my first nomination is Tony Blair.
Yes.
Tony Blair could, of course, be Plank of the Century.
He could.
Because
for what?
He's responsible for so much, isn't he? He's responsible for the collapse in our economy. He's responsible for the illegal war against Iraq. He's responsible for open borders, infiltrating the company code, making directors responsible for the kind of nonsense that Sadiq Khan now hangs his hat on with social justice, this sort of fight for social justice. Tony Blair was a disaster as a Prime Minister. But for some reason, he keeps getting a platform. And as he's left office, or when he left office, he set up the Tony Blair Institute for nothing less than global change. That's what the name of his institute is.
He might as well have said global domination.
Global domination. And it's funded, as we've just discovered, by people like Larry Ellison, Bill Gates. So the conspiracy theory lot...
To a very large extent, $81 million this guy Ellison has given in the last 2 years alone to the Tony Blair Foundation.
So Tony Blair's going to be taking instructions from him, isn't he? Yeah. And he got $3.5 million the other year from Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation. And those people who think there's a kind of conspiracy theory going on about global domination, global institutions running the country and democracy being under attack can be forgiven for thinking that when you see the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. But anyway, the reason he's my Plank of the Week, apart from the fact he's increasingly looking like Dracula, have you noticed that? He's getting sort of...
Well, do you know, actually, Peter Hitchens...
Maybe he only emerged.
Maybe he is.
Peter Hitchens actually did better than that. He's actually... And he showed 2 pictures in his column. He's actually beginning to look like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. And you know, remember that time where he had longer hair for a while? But if you look at pictures of Gollum, it's Tony Blair. It really is.
The mask is slipping.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, so he is Plank of the Week because he is now pulling Starmer's strings. We can see that. Starmer is taking instructions from the Global Institute of Tony Blair. And he is doing exactly what he did in the run-up to the election in 1997, pivoting the Labour Party towards what we might begin to think would be an acceptable position for a governing authority. But his aim, as he disclosed in the last week, is to get us to rejoin the European Union. He was the champion of the second referendum back in 2017 through to 2019, and now he wants Keir Starmer in power. Once he gets Keir Starmer in power, he's going to give the vote to 6.5 million EU settled member state citizens in the United Kingdom. They get the vote. The 16-year-olds get the vote.
And prisoners.
And prisoners. and no doubt all the people who've come across from France over the Channel, they'll no doubt get the vote too. And we'll be back in the European Union. So Tony Blair, this Draculesque character who pulls global strings and is having his own global strings pulled by big money, is going to be running the United Kingdom again, and I think that's a very good reason.
I think it is. Do you know what his apparently core principle is with this money that he's getting from Ellison? And he's got 800 people working at the Tony Blair Foundation. So just imagine that. Yeah. It's a huge organisation. Right-wing think tanks get it in the neck all the time. The biggest right-wing think tank employs 24 people and has a budget of 4 million. This is, 20 times bigger. He says that basically the money's been earmarked for a joint partnership to help African countries to create a central database of vaccination records, including yellow fever, polio and measles. They want to combat all these diseases in Africa. And you think to yourself, really? That's a bit Bill Gatesian, isn't it?
And you can't help but question the motives, can you? You think prima facie that's probably a good thing because you can monitor who's been vaccinated, you can vaccinate those who haven't. But it's a control thing, isn't it?
There is no way that when you've got people of a commercial imperative like Bill Gates and Larry Ellison, people that are worth billions and billions of dollars, you cannot convince me or anybody else that there is not a commercial reason for them doing this. Yeah. So this is about somehow monetising this globalist push to run us from the back seat almost,
Well, people like this guy Ellison have got massive locks on the American healthcare system. He's already in and out of the Downing Street computer business. In fact, the reason that he and Blair are mates is because when Blair was in Prime Minister's chair, they did a big contract to gain access to computer records in Downing Street. Very, very complicated. Anyway, coming up, we will be doing more. We've got the national broadcaster lined up. We've also got Harry and Meghan, would you believe? And, of course, a pop star. Only this time, it is not Beyonce. That was last week. This is Plank of the Week. More after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's the only place to spend a Friday night here at TalkTV because after this, you're going to have the world according to Mike Graham, which is even better than this show. Well, that's not quite. We've got a great panel here. We've already done 4 incredible nominations, and I'm going to add one more, which is a familiar sound here, and it is, of course, the BBC, the well-known state monopoly, where you have to pay money to watch it, or you even have to pay money if you don't watch it, otherwise you'll go to prison. Now, the problem for the BBC is that they're completely and utterly out of touch with what's going on in the world, including the way that live television is now being streamed. Things like this, which people are watching currently, are completely knocking the BBC into a cocked hat. Earlier this year, BBC News Channel merged with the international channel, and they immediately lost 1 million listeners. And what that tells you is that they're actually measuring it wrong, because the 1 million listeners probably were never there in the first place. And they regularly get sort of 0 ratings for things that they do on some of these news channels. They're always popping up with new reporters. And you see some person reporting in Washington, D.C. You haven't seen them before. Oh, yeah, they used to work for the international channel. But recently we had the radio results that came in, and then we saw that Radio 2, in their quest to find a younger audience, have lost another 1 million. Yeah. Because they got rid of all of the people like Ken Bruce, they got rid of Chris Evans, they got rid of Vanessa Feltz, they got rid of Graham Norton, they got rid of Steve Wright. Some of them, of course, you can find within these towers here at TalkTV. Simon Mayer went as well. But not only when they let go of Ken Bruce did they lose his entire audience, but his entire audience has moved with him to a new commercial station where not only have they joined him, but he's also taken his game that he invented, which I think is called Popmaster. And not only are they now going to do it, but Channel 4 is going to do it. So whoever has been running Radio 2 has lost all of it, right?
They've taken their audience for granted. And what they don't realise is people have options now. There's not just 3 channels. There's loads of channels. There's the entire internet. You have to compete now.
Yeah. This is the thing. The fragmentation of media has meant that you really need a coalition of people to listen to you. You can't just have, the channel for young people or left-wing people. You really need that kind of solid coalition. And most people will just settle with good, honest, decent reporting. But even if you don't have a flavour to it.
But if you're an entity that is a public sector entity, as the BBC is, and as Mike says, you're kind of taxed to watch it whether you like or not. There's therefore no accountability. There's therefore no scrutiny. What do you care?
But I wouldn't,
because they're not being paid on results.
Also, they don't actually know how to get an audience because they just start a programme and they've already got one. All they know how to do is lose an audience. It's the only thing they know how to do.
They're doing really well.
Yeah, they're good at that.
I don't even want them to chase the fluff and the entertainment this and all of that and the strictly that. I just want them to be good, honest, factual. If I'm watching the BBC, I don't want to see an agenda. I want you to tell me the news, not what you think I should think about the news.
And that's
I would be fine. This is the problem. Because where is the trusted source? That was what the BBC was supposed to be. It was supposed to be impartial. It was supposed to be honest. It wasn't supposed to have the fluff this, entertainment that, strictly this. It was just supposed to be
And you've only got to look
straight.
at the amount of people now that are objecting to paying the licence fee. It's something like 2.5 million people are refusing to pay the licence fee.
Well, so many people in recent sort of years, in the last 2 years, have just refused to pay it.
Yeah.
They've lost something like several 100,000 people in the country who are just simply now refusing to do it. And to add insult to those two figures of 2 million there that they've lost another 1.3 million from Radio 4. Now, Radio 4 used to be the sort of go-to believable news source. Even, as recently as 20 years ago, you'd all listen to the Today programme in the morning because that was where all
woke.
Yeah, but now it's so woke and so useless that they've lost. So that's 3.3 million. In addition to that, we've learned, I think in the last month or so, that there's a lot of older TV audiences disappearing as well because they've just lost faith, as you say, Ben, in what the BBC's messaging. So I'd say in the last year alone, the BBC has lost 4 million people.
And it's a great shame for the nation because, if you go back, if you can think back, some of us can, to the 60s and 70s and 80s, the BBC was seen globally as a great exemplar of first-class Britishness. Yeah. It was almost in our DNA that the BBC represented us because it was such a fantastic British...
We were proud of it.
We were proud of it. And we've trashed our global position, our global position, because the BBC has gone so woke.
They stopped making... This is why I often say I'm opposed to the licence fees, because they don't make a strong enough case to me. And I don't even want to go down they're too woke this, or they're not woke enough, or whatever. They're not making a strong enough case to me as the average, British citizen, as to why I should pay for it. And I'm like, if you are an excellent source of impartial journalism, if you're not focusing on the fluff or the entertainment or the woke this, you're just giving me facts, you're not trying to tell me what to think about the news.
You would come back again and again.
And at the very least, I would understand why I should pay for it.
And surely the obvious question, Mike, you might know the answer to this, I say tongue-in-cheek, how many people have been fired from the upper echelons of the BBC as a consequence of their bad performance?
None.
Yeah.
Up you go. You're next.
Yes. This is the first time I've nominated this person, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't really think about her very much. I happen to have a life. Ariana
She's a very
Grande,
big pop star, though.
a very small one. Small, big pop star.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ariana Grande, I'm nominating her because apparently she's a homewrecker.
Is she?
She is.
See, who knew? Shocking. But I mean, are you making some kind of moral judgment on her here?
No, well, okay, let me explain the story, because this is very pop.
Heaven forbid anybody finds anything in your past that they bring up.
No, I'm squeaky clean. Sir, I am a nun.
Okay.
Anyway. So, Ariana Grande...
Talking about the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly. She's pure. Ariana Grande has been filming a musical with the co-star Ethan Slater, who's been married for the last few years. He's been with his partner for, I think, a decade, and they have a 10-month-old baby.
Oh, dear.
And Ariana Grande herself, up until very recently, was married as well. Apparently, film crew from the film said that they saw them going openly on dates and, being lovey-dovey. And then a few days later, it breaks that they're having an affair, the man is getting divorced, his wife is getting all this unwanted media attention, and that Ariana Grande is also in the process of getting a divorce. Now, that's not the biggest issue, because people break up, people fall in love with different people, that's fine. But Ariana Grande has a track record, according to the ex-girlfriends of most of her exes, including Pete Davidson, including Big Sean, who I'm sure you're familiar with, the fabulous rapper, that Ariana Grande gets close to these men. In the case of Big Sean, she had a key to his house, and just, his girlfriend at the time went upstairs and saw her sitting there listening to music with Big Sean, and then a few days later they break their engagement, and then a few days after that,
presumably somebody gave her the key. It wasn't like she stole it.
Well, but the point is, she gets close to these men that are obviously in relationships, and then a few days or weeks later, they come out that, we're now with Ariana Grande, and then she rinse and repeats, basically. And she has a song called "Break Up with Your Girlfriend Because I'm Bored," and she meant it.
It was worth it just for
that.
Can
you believe it?
Yeah. It was worth it.
She meant it.
That's her anthem.
Exactly. So, in short, she is a very troubled person, clearly, because she's out here going after people's husbands and boyfriends, and I think it should be called out.
Russell, on to you and the Royals.
Yes.
Or the ex-Royals.
An old favourite. Certainly your favourites.
Yes.
Harry and Meghan.
Planks of the year. Planks of the year 2 years in a row.
Planks of the year, and probably Planks of the year this year too, I suspect. So this is the announcement, the revelation, that they have dropped $3 million on buying the rights to a book called Meet Me by the Lake, which apparently, this is hilarious, has been trailed in the newspapers as being their first work of fiction,
yes.
which I would say, no, it's not.
No. No. But it is. I believe it is the first book that Harry's actually ever bought.
Well, but
but
here's the thing.
Dr.
So,
Seuss.
you know, we've got the book Spare, we've got the Oprah interview, and of course we've got the Netflix series, which, look, famously, it's not just me saying this, were full of mistruths, exaggerations, and so on. So this definitely is not their first work of fiction. But what I find incredible about it is that, is that they've clearly been trawling authors and books for something that reflects their own lives. So this is a gratuitous means of saying, hey, look at us.
Why didn't they just buy The Grifters?
Yeah,
that's already been made into
The Sting.
Yeah, or The Sting.
Yeah. So this is a book, apparently, that they paid $3 million for that talks about, in the beginning of it, apparently, there's a car crash, there's an absent mother. Is this ringing a bell? Anybody? And clearly they're going to produce this thing at great cost, and it's really about them.
Seems quite narcissistic.
It's not about anybody else. It's about them replaying their lives, Harry's life in particular, through the medium of Hollywood, and I think it's just gratuitously pathetic and cringeable.
But it is. Well, isn't it funny watching them now, though, because they're kind of literally grasping at any straw they can find to try and remain relevant, and they don't even know why they work.
Because they've been ostracised, of course, by Spotify, Netflix,
and also the latest sort of bad black mark against Harry was that the company that he was working with, this sort of self-help company, which I think
Better Up,
which he was supposedly hired to be some kind of, founder,
Chief Impact Officer.
Whatever
the hell that
is.
is.
Chief Impact Officer. Yeah. They've just laid off hundreds of people who are all asking the question, why are you still paying this bozo, 7 figures?
Well, they've been laid
We're
off
all out of the job.
They've been laid off because of that.
No, exactly. They're not very happy about it. So, I mean, his entire message, Better Up, is like, I'll join your company, you'll get fired, I'll get $1 million.
I'm better off, you're not.
Better off, they should have
Better off, you're not.
I find them fascinating because I think they don't understand how much work it takes to just be good at something.
Yeah.
Like producing a film or writing a film or whatever.
Or doing a podcast.
Exactly. And I think that's what I find baffling about them, because I don't... Okay, in the case of Meghan, she's worked as an actress, which is, inconsistent work. Yeah, inconsistent work. But she worked as an actress for a decade. Harry, really, outside of being a royal, doesn't have any real world experience. He's never had to take the tube to go to work, work 9 hours a day.
He did fight in Afghanistan.
Well, not really. I mean, he was never in any real danger, let's be honest. But, they don't have...
It's a bit unclear
real
exactly
world
what he
experience.
did, though, isn't it?
Exactly. As a pair, they are severely lacking in any kind of real world experience. So I just think, why do they think it's so easy to do these things?
He's gone off, of course, this week he's gone off for the ultimate inclusive experience, playing polo in Japan with his very wealthy Argentinian mates.
Did he fly there?
Of course he did.
But he will buy carbon credits. He'll cleanse his soul. He'll cleanse his soul through the purchase of carbon credits.
Because everybody knows polo is the ultimate game for everyone.
Down to earth.
You don't need a horse or anything. This is, of course, Plank of the Week. We've got more coming up after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham. This is, of course, TalkTV, and this is the place where you decide, or we decide, or actually I decide, exactly who should win it. And there's been some fantastic nominations. I don't know. There might be more than one winner tonight, guys. I mean, I'm quite torn at the moment. But let's go with Candice Holdsworth's next one, and it is those pesky protesters, isn't it?
Yeah, I seem to have a bit of a theme this week. It's people chasing social media clout and just torching their credibility.
Yes.
So last week, Greenpeace decided, apparently, it has been reported, that they want to be a bit more like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion and do these big stunts and sort of, find this new way of campaigning, because apparently they believe their old ways are a little middle-aged, so they don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So they went to Rishi Sunak's house in Yorkshire whilst he wasn't there and draped all these black blankets all over it as a way to protest his new issuing of oil and gas licenses. But of course, everyone was just appalled by this. I mean, people look at this.
How did they manage to do that?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's one of the questions that we had, isn't it, last week? Because the Prime Minister's house, even if he's not there, surely you shouldn't be able to get that close to it and climb all over it, and if necessary, attach those kind of James Bond-style sticky things that blow up.
Well, otherwise you could break in and do all sorts
of
things.
You could. Imagine if you're
in
the Chinese embassy, you want to drop a few, bugs in there. Any number of things. We've got a little bit of a clip of these bozos. Let's have a look and see what they say.
We've covered the Prime Minister's mansion in hundreds of metres of black fabric to protest his plans to launch a new oil drilling frenzy. Rishi Sunak is prioritising fossil fuel profits over the climate and our own economic interests. It's scandalous. and we deserve better.
It's not a sort of unbridled exploration of the North Sea. Right. It's 100 licenses.
It's not a frenzy, is it?
It's not a frenzy. You know, and in all likelihood, none of those licenses are going to be used, because if they are used, these oil companies are going to need to get loans, but they can't, because banks won't lend to oil companies anymore because of woke policies and corporate governance.
Yeah. ESG.
And they can't get insurance because the Net Zero Insurance Alliance won't insure oil rigs. And if they cross those two hurdles, they probably won't drill for oil or gas anyway.
Taxes are ridiculous.
Because they pay 75% away in tax. Yep. The whole thing is just absurd.
Are you saying, Ben, that Rishi Sunak's new policy is not worth the paper it's written on?
It's not worth the paper it's written on.
Really?
And Greenpeace wasted all that effort.
Mike,
they needn't have worried.
Mike, how dare you?
I mean, I have to say, he is the master, isn't he, Rishi Sunak, of coming out with things he's going to do and then just doesn't do it. And everybody kind of goes,
But he's trying. He's trying. And
he's
he
being
looks
stopped for doing it.
He looks like a school prefect, and I think that's what's got him through life so far, and that's what's going to continue to promote him.
But the more extreme these Just Stop Oils and Extinction Rebellion and Greenpeace go, the more that they turn people off. So actually, they strengthen the other side, they don't realise that, actually.
Well, even the thing that's kind of confusing at the moment about Keir Starmer, you talk about Rishi Sunak and his inability to make anything happen. Keir Starmer doesn't seem to be sure whether he's in support of these characters or not, because this week we also learned that Labour's candidate to replace Nadine Dorries in mid-Bedfordshire is a former activist for Greenpeace, if he's not anymore, and there's pictures of him dressed up as a zombie demonstrating outside the Department of Energy.
Your next cabinet minister.
But we've also had Labour taking £1.5 million in donation from the main funder for Just Stop Oil.
Dale Vince.
Dale Vince, And actually, Keir Starmer, I mean, unlike him to flip-flop, more flip-flops than a beach hut, frankly, Keir Starmer. He's now saying that Just Stop Oil are actually bad in terms of
he doesn't like
not
their
supporting
tactics,
them.
does he?
Yeah, and he thinks it's shameful and so on, but he wasn't saying that a few weeks ago. He's now flip-flopped also on those North Sea licences, isn't he? Where he said, well, actually, we did say that we were going to do away with all the current ones. We're going to keep the current ones now. We're just not going to have any new ones. So can we believe that man either?
This is Blair saying, just appear to be a bit centre-right.
Centre.
I think, yes, he'll give him ideas.
Slow down on net zero.
Slow down.
We didn't get to finish the bit.
Stop taking the knee.
This is basically what he's trying to get. He's trying to see what the appeal was about Tony Blair that ushered him that massive majority back in.
It's fighting for the centre ground, and then once they're elected, they can do all the stuff they really want to do, which they won't have a mandate for, by the way.
But there is a new emerging centre ground on issues like net zero. People are actually applying a lot more scrutiny to this, and they're saying, hang on, is all this sacrifice worth the cost? Right. And so anyone who's trying to advocate for cliff edges and radical policies, they're going to struggle electorally. Right. And I think Tony Blair, for everything we've said, he's shrewd. He knows that. Yes. And he wants to get elected.
Well, he also knows the more people ask the question, well, exactly when is this going to happen? Why is it going to make my life any different? Because anytime you ask anyone who's in politics, what is net zero? When is it achievable?
How is it going
what is it going to make? What is it going to do?
Life?
How is it going to make my life different? And all they know at the moment is it's going to cost them more money, and therefore they don't want it.
And when you understand that Britain is only responsible for 1% of global emissions versus China, Russia, India, the United States worth really 80%. What is the point? What is the point in us doing this?
And they've actually done themselves a lot of damage. As Lord Carlisle came out this week and said in the House of Lords that Greenpeace, who are up until this moment have been kind of seen as a relatively sensible, campaigning group on behalf of the environment, but they sit in on government meetings and they're consulted. And with this kind of behaviour, they will be they'll be kicked out.
They have, actually.
And people will say, we're not going to talk to you anymore.
Well, this has happened. DEFRA's excluded them. So this is what they've done to themselves.
Quite right. Well, we haven't finished with the eco-nutters because we're going to have some more coming up a bit later on. But Ben, you've got a fascinating story.
Shortage of
this is one of those great human interest stories that we used to get from. When I worked in America, these stories were front-page news in Britain. Not anymore, but this is really good. Tell us.
I mean, this probably wouldn't have happened in Britain. It is such a sensational story, but it's a story about a couple who clearly fell out with each other. Yeah.
Say that again.
No kidding.
Your sense of irony is unmatched, honestly.
Listen, we've all been there, Ben.
they had a little child. They had a little child, so as they're going through their divorce, they thought they'd live together. And for some reason, he trusted his wife to make his morning coffee. Yeah. And his morning coffee progressively tasted increasingly of bleach. And he thought, oh, hang on, something's funny going on over here. And he began to suspect that his wife was putting something in the coffee maker machine. And so he's set up a whole load of cameras. initially, law enforcement didn't believe him because they thought it could have been anyone putting the bleach into this machine. But eventually, he set up cameras at home as well. Sorry, the initial cameras were at work, and then he set up cameras at home where they could only be her putting the bleach in.
Okay.
It never crossed his mind, of course, to make his own coffee.
Right.
He thought he'd go on trusting this woman and just have cameras all over the place. Anyway.
A traditional sort of guy.
This is why she was divorcing him, clearly.
Exactly.
You know.
Anyway, this Melody Johnson was caught red-handed attempting to murder her husband.
Incredible.
By poisoning him through progressively increasing doses of bleach.
But with one of the most potent smelling things.
Well, only in America. I mean, I don't know what sort of bleach she was using, but have a look at this. This is a clip from a news report by Arizona News.
But rather than ask his wife if she might know, he got chemical testing strips and secret cameras that he says show her trying to poison and kill him.
Melody was trying to poison him by pouring bleach into his coffee maker. Yep, that's real life. And now Melody Johnson is facing real charges of attempted first-degree murder.
Blimey. What a pair. You think in America, go down the old-fashioned route, just shoot the guy. And blame a burglar or something.
What would you use to kill your partner?
I knew you'd come. Listen, when I read this story, I was like, this is such an amateur, right? If I really had to kill my husband, obviously I'd go with cyanide.
Yeah, okay.
You thought about this?
I've thought about it many times.
Cyanide is a one-hit, isn't it?
Exactly, and it stops respiration.
Is it untraceable?
Is it untraceable? That's the big thing.
Well, this is amateur, please.
Suddenly gone a bit dark, this show. I mean, I don't know if we keep talking about this. Very worrying, this. We'll be handing the files over to Scotland Yard later. But don't worry, they never investigate anything anyway. So if you did kill your husband, they'd never catch you. Coming up next, though, more from the Eco Nutters. And also, we'll find who's the winner of Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. And of course, we're in the final furlong because we've heard from everybody else and I've only got one more nomination to go. I have to say, though, with a show that's got Harry and Meghan, it's got Sadiq Khan in it, it's got so much going on. Matt Hancock as well. I mean, these are all big names for Plank of the Week. They've been on it a lot. So this could be very, very, very tight indeed at the end. I'm going to nominate, after Candice's Greenpeace nomination, these are sort of slightly off to the side because they're even more nutty than Greenpeace. Yeah. And this is, of course, the tyre extinguishers of Exeter, right? I mean, can you imagine the old Citizen Smith show where they had these kind of ridiculous communists setting up in Tooting, Wolfie Smith,
the Tooting Popular Front.
People's Republic of Brixton. And that's what this lot are like. They're the sort of People's Republic of Exeter. And they've decided, this is actually quite sick, that terrible accident that happened where the kids were killed and run over by a woman whose car ran out of control in Wimbledon back in early July. They think that is proof that somehow 4x4 cars are dangerous and they should be outlawed. So they broke into a Jaguar Land Rover dealership in Exeter and slashed the tyres of 60 different cars. Now, you know a thing or two about cars, Russell. You're talking millions of pounds worth of cars.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money because not only were they, in the old days in Bristol, the sort of the muesli munchers, they were taking lentils and putting them inside the actual...
the valve.
And then somehow that was letting the tyre air out. These characters were just slashing the tyres.
It's criminal damage.
It's criminal damage. Now, what you don't hear, of course, from the left is that these people are doing something disgraceful. It's a criminal act. They shouldn't be supported because as soon as the Blade Runner guys down in Bromley started taking cameras down that Sadiq Khan had put up for ULEZ, right? People said, you mustn't condone criminal activity. Yes. But everybody said, of course, you mustn't condone criminal activity. But with these characters, they because they're sort of doing something real to save the planet, apparently this is something worthwhile.
But what about the unintended consequences? Now, OK, I was going to say nurses and others. Now, there's probably not that many nurses drive brand new Land Rovers and Jaguars, in fairness. But, doctors and others that needed their vehicle back the next day, customers' cars, that are therefore vandalised. Yeah. That's what it is. It's vandalism.
Well, they're not just vandalised because they're so heavy, these cars, and I used to have one, that if you have a wheel of an SUV sitting on the ground with no tyre, damages the rim of the wheel, could cause an accident or could write the car off. So then you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage.
Has anyone been prosecuted?
I don't think they've even found them yet because they went in under cover of night, they filmed it, but they were wearing balaclavas.
Courageous, isn't it?
I mean, just absolute scumbags. They really are. But last year, this is a lot that did it in Bristol, they actually, Channel 4, of course it would be them, managed to catch up with somebody who had had their car attacked. And this is what the person said.
Would it make you stop driving a 4x4 because of the emissions and so forth? Would it change your attitude?
No.
Not at all?
No.
No.
Brilliant. Not at all. So he's just going to carry on driving them. They claim that they've got sort of members around the world, and they've scuppered something like 10,000 cars worldwide. I mean, I just think it's outrageous.
Well, that's an international crime syndicate.
Yeah, exactly right.
They need to be sat on.
Surely you could do them for racketeering, conspiracy.
I mean, I think we need to like recognise that the hysteria around climate change and climate activism is breeding mentally unwell people. Like, can we just establish that fact?
The cult,
the religion.
The cult is crazy.
When you have politicians like Sadiq Khan, who are actually supposed to behave in a responsible manner, you know, making these hyperbolic statements, these doomsday predictions, and all of that, you are justifying.
He's encouraging them.
Mentally unwell people from behaving in such erratic and irrational ways. I mean, let's just call it spade a spade.
Them. Yeah, absolutely right. And the point is that at the end of the day, if you're attacking 60 cars in a Jaguar Land Rover dealership, I would reckon at least 20 to 30 of those cars would be electric in any given state.
Exactly.
Because they're actually now slashing the tyres because they won't know.
I don't suppose
by looking at them.
They wouldn't have discriminated at all.
Really.
No, because they wouldn't. Because they're too stupid to even understand that. You know, that's a hybrid, that's an electric one.
But is it too much to ask that they're found, brought to task, prosecuted, and made to pay for the damage, and obviously a custodial sentence?
Yeah.
This is probably classed as a socially justified low-level crime.
Oh, exactly.
But they'll go in front of some liberal judge that says, a bit like the statues that were pulled down, and the liberal judge in Bristol said it's not criminal damage, it's okay, it's protest.
No, but sometimes they say that.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's going to be a load of protests after this decision is made. Because, you know, we've got Tony Blair, you know, the man who ruined Britain, Matt Hancock, the man who ruined it again, Sadiq Khan, the man who's trying to ruin it. But it's none of them. Because there's only one story in town this week. It's the Bibby Stockholm. It has to be the Bibby Stockholm as the plank of the week because it's the one thing that's got everybody going. And it is, in fact, because it's an inanimate object, I think the first inanimate object that's ever been made plank of the week. So congratulations to the Bibby Stockholm. Well done to Rishi Sunak. Thank you to Esther. Thank you to Russell. Thank you to Candice. Thank you to Ben. That was one of the greatest shows that we've ever done, I think, on Plank of the Week. So well done. There might even be a drink in it for you afterwards. Coming up next, it's The World According to Mike Graham. That's pretty good as well. See you next week.